Shall we do a review of last week?
Yeah. Yeah. So
a month ago.
Who remembers what happened in the first book of Dante?
Not it.
Virgil.
So Dante was wandering through the forest, literally, but metaphorically, he was a metaphor for being exiled from Florence. He met a few creatures who also had metaphorical resonance, and then he met Virgil, who said he was going to bring him through hell and show him what's up. And then afterward, he's going to meet Beatrice, who Dante was sketchily in love with, even though they only met like twice and she was 12 or something like that. And after meeting...
They met again, but man.
Dante says more in this chapter, do not worry.
Okay, good. More simping to come.
Oh, no.
I don't think they entered hell yet, but they're about to. Yeah.
Yeah. And there were even more metaphors than the ones that you mentioned. Virgil's kind of a metaphor. Hell's kind of a metaphor. It's all a metaphor. There's a hill, that's metaphor. The sun's a metaphor. Lots of metaphors. Nothing's real. Everything's a metaphor.
The word metaphor.
Yeah, so Dante, he was in the middle of the walk of life, or in the middle of the path of life, and he came upon this wood, and the forest was gross and dark and creepy. And then I see the light, the sun is shining at the top of this hill. I'm gonna go up there. And he climbs the hill, and that's where these like beasts show up. There's like the wolf and the lion and the leopard or whatever.
And the wardrobe.
And Dante's like, no. And then came back down. And it was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Most of it was just like sobbing on the ground. Virgil showed up. And it was like, I'll help you. So that's kind of where we're at now.
And then Dante plays off so cool. It's like, oh, you're Virgil. Oh, that's so fortunate. It's like, bro, Virgil. No. This man came back from the dead to say hi to you. You're just like, all right, cool. Let's go.
So in the last chapter, we were kind of around sunrise. Like we saw the sun cresting over this mountain, and Dante was trying to climb up the mountain, up the hill. And at the start of Canto 2, the sun is starting to set now. So Dante spent like an entire day trying to climb up this hill, trying to like wrestle with what to do next. So that's where we find ourselves. We have Dante, and then we have Virgil, and then we have Virgil quoting Beatrice, and then we have Virgil quoting Beatrice quoting Lucia.
Maybe since there's three of us, like you're doing the narrator, we could do Dante, Virgil, and then like Beatrice, and Beatrice can also take quoting Lucia.
Sound good. Lucia.
Okay. So this is Canto 2, Canto 2, Introduction to the Inferno and the Mission of Virgil. Daylight was going, and the dusky air was now releasing from their weary toil all living things on earth. And I alone was making ready to sustain the war, both of the road and of the sympathy, which my unerring memory will relate. So Dante says, I alone was preparing to undertake this great task, even though Virgil's hanging out with him this whole time, because he's the only mortal here, and he's the only one who has to like steel himself and prepare himself and get ready to undertake this big task. And he describes it as a war, so it's clearly a big deal. And then he emulates the classics, the epics, by calling on the muses. So he says, O muses, O high genius, help me now. O memory that wrotest what I saw, herewith shall thy nobility appear. So he talks about memory as something that's written. So he kind of believed that memory was like written down in your brain like a book, and it wouldn't change. Like memory was like, it was like photographic memory, which I don't know if that was like a of the time thing, or if Dante had a photographic memory and believed that everybody experienced the world that way or what. But he's basically saying like everything I'm saying here is actual literal fact and really happened to me. Which we know is not true because he's not like crawling through hell, but
but it's Dante. Dante's dramatic.
So he turns to Virgil and he starts to talk to Virgil. I then began.
Consider, poet, thou that guidest me, if strong be, if strong my virtue be.
Just right from Dante's mouth. Oh, shit.
Shit.
I was prepared to mess up, but not so.
It's funny. I think it's in tone.
If strong my virtue be, or ere thou trust me to the arduous course, thou sayest that the sire of Silvio entered, when still corruptible, the immortal world, and that while in his body he was there. Hence, that to him the opponent of all ill was courteous, considering the great result that was to come from him, both who and what seems not unfitting to a thoughtful man, for he is, for he of, just like bleeping already, okay, for he of fostering Rome, and of her sway in the Empyrean heaven was chosen as sire, and both of these, if one would tell the truth, were foreordained unto the holy place, where greatest Peter's follower hath his seat. Well on this quest, for which thou givest him praise, he heard the things which of his victory the causes were, and of the papal robe. The chosen vessel went there afterward to bring thence confirmation in the faith, through which one enters on salvation's path.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there because there's a lot of information in this.
A lot.
All right. So first, when we're talking about the Empyrean sphere, that's basically saying heaven where God hangs out. And I don't know if you can see this. So there's just these like circles.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically in the middle is Earth, and then the moon, and then Mercury, Venus, the sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the fixed stars, the primum mobile, which is like the cloth on which the universe exists. So this was basically like the terracentric or whatever version of the universe. Like Earth was the center of the universe, and then all the planets out from that, and then outside of that was like a shell, and then outside of the shell is the Empyrean realm. So that's where God and all the angels just hung out singing. So basically, like, there are all these spheres and they radiate out. So it's not a word that we use or understand. It just means heaven, basically. God and Jesus are chilling there with all the angels and their friends. But basically, in this paragraph, Dante is just proving how smart he is and how much he knows about classics, how much he knows about history, how much he knows about religion. So he starts off by saying, oh, like you're telling me that I'm virtuous enough to travel through hell and get to purgatory and to heaven, but you talked about Aeneas, the sire of Silvio or Silvius. Aeneas traveled through the underworld and like basically followed very similar journey and met God, who basically God was like, you're cool because I know you're going on to found Rome, and then from Rome the Vatican will spring up, and that will be the center of all of this religious Christian holy power that will lead countless others to salvation. And then Dante brings in comments about the Pope, comments about Peter's followers, the Pope, the papal robe is like the Pope's cloak, the chosen vessel, also the Pope, and basically saying that God was cool with Aeneas, even though Aeneas was not Christian because he was born before Christianity and born before Christ's time. God allowed him to journey through all of these places, even though Virgil himself is not allowed to journey through these places, because God knew that he would go on to propagate the faith and bring a bunch of people to salvation. So that's kind of Dante talking about the whole purpose of the papacy, saying the purpose of the papacy is to bring people to spiritual salvation. Dante talking about Aeneas and talking about how much he knows about Aeneas and how smart he is, that he's read the classics. And Dante talking about like his views on religion and taking a little bit of time to prove that he's humble and doesn't think that he actually deserves to be in heaven, even though he's writing a whole book on how he's going into heaven.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it to heaven. Not yet though. No spoilers.
So that's kind of where we're at now.
See, that's kind of interesting. How much Dante's trying to prove himself, and there's like this bitter tone in everything that he's saying, where like he's listening a bunch of things.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, we know you're Dante, bro. You don't need to prove
Like,
yourself.
bro, you wrote the whole book though, Dante. Like, you wrote God, you wrote Beatrice, like you wrote all these things that all these people supposedly said in your memory that's infallible.
Right. Dante was a huge fan of, what was that guy? The semi-bald guy, Augustine?
Mm-hmm.
Saint Augustine or something. The man that wrote like the most recent version of the Bible, like the Bible remastered 1450, whatever. Like he was such a fan of this man. And I remember in class they were talking about how like Dante hated the Pope, which apparently everyone hated the Pope all the time.
Yeah, because the Pope was just like, give me all your land. I want this land. I'm gonna call the French people in to take your land so I can have it. And Dante was like, bro, stay in your lane.
Please stay in your lane. Exactly. Stay in your lane and your land, man. And yeah, like I remember vaguely being told that in the introduction, Dante's trying to directly criticize Pope by restating the Saint Augustine principles.
Yeah.
And not only is he flexing his own knowledge as like a credible source of theology, but it's also saying that I'm telling you these things as facts, and these are simply not what the Pope is telling you. Yeah. So you have to pick which one. And Dante makes sense. So everyone's like, oh, maybe he's right.
Read one more sentence and I'm going to stop you again.
Okay. Salvation's path. But why should I go there? Or who concedes it? I'm not Aeneas, nor yet Paul am I. Me worthy of this, nor I, nor others deem. If, therefore, I consent to come, I fear lest foolish be my coming. Thou art wise, and canst much better judge than I can talk.
So when he says, I'm not Aeneas, nor yet Paul am I, he's directly mirroring the Aeneid, where Aeneas, as he's entering the underworld and talking to Hades, is like, why are you talking about Theseus or Alcides, these great heroes? I'm not these great heroes. So Dante's like, ooh, I'm just like Aeneas. I'm going to say I'm not like these great heroes. Aeneas and Paul, which are a hero of classic literature and a hero of Christianity. And then also he uses the word io in Italian, which means I, but a lot of times using that pronoun is for emphasis because you don't actually need it because the verb agrees with the pronoun. So he's like really emphasizing and repeating over and over again, I'm not Aeneas, I'm not Paul, I'm not worthy. Other people say I'm worthy, but I don't believe it. So he's very much like focused on himself as the subject. And such as he who unwills what he willed, and changes so his purpose through new thoughts, that what he had begun he wholly leaves. Such on that gloomy slope did I become, for as I thought it over, I gave up the enterprise so hastily commenced. And this is now Virgil replying.
If I have rightly understood thy words,
replied the shade of that great-hearted man,
thy soul is hurt by shameful cowardice, which many times so sorely hinders one that from an honored enterprise it terms him, as seeing falsely doth a shying beast. In order that thou rid thee of this fear, I'll tell thee why I came, and what I heard the first time I was grieved on thy account. Among the intermediate souls I was, when me a lady called, so beautiful and happy that I begged her to command. Her eyes were shining brighter than a star, when sweetly and softly she began to say, as with an angel's voice, she spoke to me.
So Virgil comes up to Dante and is like, oh, you're a coward? You're a coward and you're letting that stop you from doing a good thing? Okay, let me tell you why. And then he talks about this lady he met. Who wants to guess who the lady was?
Beatrice?
Yeah, it sure is. She's got sparkly eyes. She's very pretty. Dante simp time. Who wants to be Beatrice? Murat, I believe that's you.
I'm Beatrice.
With an angel's voice.
Oh, gorgeous mantis.
No! No.
We have no account of Beatrice. Maybe Beatrice was a smoker, okay?
I don't think that's tobacco though, because that was from America and they didn't know about America yet.
Well, she smoked what she found, which is why.
Okay.
I didn't mean anything by that. I don't know what you... I mean, you have to cut that out. You gotta have to cut that out. Either way. Oh, Cortius, man, tune spirit. Those whose fame is still enduring in the world above, and will endure as long as lasts the world. A friend of mine, but not a friend of fortune, is on his journey over the lonely slope, obstructed so. Then he had turned through fear, and from what I have heard of him in heaven, I fear lest he may now have strayed so far, that I have risen too late to give him help. Bestir thee, then, and with thy finished speech, and with whatever his escape may need, assist him so that I may be consoled. I, who now have thee go, am Beatrice. Thence come I, whither I would fain return. 'Twas love that moved me, love that makes me speak. When in my presence of my Lord again, often I shall commend thee unto him.
So Beatrice shows up to Virgil and is like, this is the first of many appeals that we'll see to undying fame as the only source of at least positive immortality offered to the people who are suffering in hell. So she comes to Virgil and she's like, hey, Virgil, everybody still knows about you. You're super famous. Have immortality too. And she talks about Dante, a friend of mine, but not a friend of fortune. So Dante's kind of saying, I got pretty unlucky because I got kicked out of my home and I'm never going back. Basically, Beatrice knows everything that's going on because she's up in heaven hanging out with her homies, the angels and the saints and God. And she's like, okay, my friend Dante, whom I love, is down here on this hill and he's trying to get up and he can't and he's scared. So I'm going to send somebody to help. And then she introduces herself. She says, I'm Beatrice. Nice to meet you. I would go myself, but I'm not going to go down there because it's sketch. And then she talks about the love that moved her. And it's like the very noble, pure, courtly, religious love, similar to like the love of the Virgin Mary towards all of mankind. And she's so saintly and blessed and beautiful and sparkly and angelic. So then Virgil introduces again.
Thereat she ceased to speak, and I began.
This is Virgil quoting Virgil.
O Lady of Virtue, thou through whom alone the human race excels all things contained within the heaven that hath the smallest circles, thy bidding pleases me so much, that late-eyed be hadst thou already been obeyed. Thou needst but to disclose to me thy will. But tell me why thou dost not mind descending into this center from that ample place, whither thou art so eager to return.
So basically, Virgil's kind of up in purgatory. Like, Virgil's allowed to transverse the circles a little bit because he was a great guy and God loves him, but he's not holy, so he can't go to heaven. And Beatrice came down and was like, I don't want to go all the way down to hell. I can't lead Dante through hell because I'm too great to go down to hell. I'm too nice. But
I'm too nice.
And Virgil's like, yeah, but why did you even come down from heaven? Like, why is this so important to you? And he's also like, oh, you're so beautiful and wonderful. Of course I will do anything that you ask. And if I wait even a second, it's too long. And if I knew what you wanted, I would already be doing it. So now Beatrice will tell Virgil what she wants.
Since thou wouldst know thereof so inwardly, I'll tell thee briefly.
She replied to me,
why I am not afraid to enter here. Of those things only should one be afraid. Only should one be afraid that have the power of doing injury, not of the rest, for they should not be feared. I, of his mercy, am so made by God, that me your wretchedness doth not affect, nor any flame of yonder fire molest. There is a gentle lady up in heaven, who grieves so at this check whereto I sent thee, that broken is stern judgment there above. She called Lucia in her prayer and said, now hath thy faithful servant need of thee, and I, too, recommend him to thy care. Lucia, hostile to all cruelty, set forth thereat and came onto the place where I with ancient Rachel had my seat. Why, Beatrice, she said, True praise of God, dost thou not succour him who loved thee so, that for thy sake he left the common herd? Dost thou not hear the anguish of his cry? Seest not the death that fights him on the flood? O'er which the sea availeth not to boast? Ne'er were there any world so swift to seek their profit and avoid their loss. As I, after such words as these were uttered, descended hither from my blessed seat, confiding in that noble speech of thine, which honors thee and whosoever has heard it.
So why don't we pause there, because it is dense and there's a little bit. So Virgil asked Beatrice, so why do you come down here then? And because it's not a great place for somebody as like noble and holy as you. And Beatrice basically says, well, you see, and this is kind of a scene that represents the court drama of the day. She's like, well, you see, I was chilling in heaven with my homies. The reason that I came down here is because this gentle lady up in heaven, who's the Virgin Mary, she called Lucia and she was like, Lucia, why don't you go and tell her, why doesn't she go help her friend Dante? And then Lucia, who's Saint Lucia, she's the patron saint of the blind. She had her like eyeballs gouged out by the Romans or something in biblical times. It was pretty metal. She's pretty metal. I'm a big fan. But she came down and Beatrice was hanging out with her friend Rachel from the Bible. Lucia came down and was like, why, Beatrice, I heard that your friend Dante is down on the hill and he's suffering so very much. Why do you not help him? And Beatrice was like, oh, yes, I must help my beloved Dante. I love him so much. And they're just having this like feminine, courtly like exchange. And then she comes down and she's just like, you know what? Like, that was very compelling. And Dante is wonderful. And I'm going to go help him. And I'm going to go find the guy to do it. And then she comes down to Virgil and she's got tears in her eyes. She's like, Virgil, will you please help my poor Dante? He's trying to help. And there's so many animals.
There's so many animals.
There are hella animals.
So now we have Virgil bringing it back. So now we're like one layer uncovered. Virgil's talking back to Dante now.
Mm-hmm. I would like to add one thing.
Yeah.
Beatrice never liked Dante in real life when she was alive.
Dude, they like exchanged a few letters. And Dante's writing this book where he's simping so hard and he's like, oh, Beatrice loved me. She was in love with me. She came down from heaven to tell everybody that she was in love with me and save my soul from hell.
Yo,
and
in heaven she realized.
Like, dude, you gotta chill. She's dead. The idea that the Virgin Mary would get down off her seat, weeping next to God for the death of her son, Jesus, to go hang out with Beatrice and like, go get your bro. He's down there on the hill crying. And in this book, Dante's like, oh, me? I don't deserve to go to heaven. Not me.
Not me, no.
Oh, I'm so humble.
Dante's got such a Jesus complex. It's so weird.
Yeah, like Phoebe.
Check out our video, Classics in Counseling.
Hey.
You want to see Jesus?
Yeah, it's a good one.
Right. To everyone else who didn't see that video, it's just like, wow, that was a hot take.
Yeah, actually, that's really inappropriate, but okay.
Watch the videos. Watch them all. They're all good.
If you don't want to be offended by everything we say, watch all our videos.
Exactly. You'll understand the hate for olives. You'll understand, you know, how we feel about Jesus.
Yo, you won't be less offended, but you will understand it.
You'll be offended about different things.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like the presence of olives.
Yeah.
Like the presence of olives.
And Agamemnon.
Delight to my life.
Son of Atreus.
Oh, son of Atreus.
All right. So Virgil now explain to Dante why this impassioned plea was so moving to you.
Then, after she had spoken to me thus, weeping, she turned her shining eyes away, which made me hasten all the more to come. And even as she wished, I came to thee, and led thee from the presence of the beast, which robbed thee of the fair mount's short approach. What is it then? Why dost thou hold back? Why dost thou lodge such baseness in thy heart? And wherefore free and daring art thou not, since three so blessed ladies care for thee within the court of heaven, and my words, too, give thee the promise of so much that is good?
So Virgil comes to Dante and is like, "Bud, you afraid? Are you afraid of this? I, Virgil, and Beatrice, and Lucia, and the Virgin Mary are all on your side, and you're afraid? Get over yourself."
Get over yourself. Honestly, like, yes.
So, and Dante, as little flowers by the chill of night, bowed down and closed when brightened by the sun, stand all erect and open on their stems, so likewise with my wearied strength did I. And such good daring coursed into my heart that I began as one who had been freed.
Oh, piteous she who hastened to my help, and courteous thou that didst at once obey the words of truth that she addressed to thee. Thou hast with such desire disposed my heart toward going on, by reason of thy words, that to my first intention I've returned. Go on now, since we two have but one will, thou leader, and thou Lord and teacher thou.
I thus addressed him. Then, when he had moved, I entered on into the wild and arduous course. So Dante hears all this good news, and he's like, "You know what? No, you're right. I'm gonna go. Yeah, I got this.
Yeah, I can do this."
So this whole chapter is basically Virgil saying, "All right, let's go." And Dante's like, No. I'm not good enough for this. I can't go to heaven. I can't get through hell. It's too hard. I'm too scared, and I'm not virtuous enough." And then Virgil's like, "Nah, bud. Let's go. I'ma got you. Beatrice got you. Lucia's got you. The Virgin Mary's got you." And Dante's like, "You know what? I guess I am pretty dope. Let's go."
Yes, I am dope.
Yeah.
Oh, Dante. Turns out he wasn't so dope.
It's very dense and rich,
Mm-hmm.
but in terms of plot, not too much. Multiple times, Dante like tries and fails and tries and fails and tries and fails, or tries and gives up, or tries and gets disheartened. I think in some ways may represent kind of a psychological depression that he went through after being evicted from Florence. So just like that experience of like depression cycles, but also just like everything, you know, like the political situation, the religious situation, him like in life, even in literature, just like trying and getting disheartened because he can't create his masterpiece that he wants to create, like I think is an important thing that kind of continues.
We'll need to put him into some therapy.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure Dante may or may not have been on the spectrum. Dante had or at least ADHD, Dante had very intense, passionate interests that were like lifelong, like lasted decades and decades. So like when he got into something, he got into it, and he had very black and white thinking and very like rigid, structured, formulaic thoughts about the things that he was into. So it's entirely possible that he was somewhere on the spectrum and had very like, you know, those tendencies.
Right.
Obviously, he's dead for a long time, and I cannot diagnose him, even if I were able to diagnose autism spectrum disorder, but he definitely had some of those signs.
Mm-hmm. I mean, definitely obsessive. I feel like a lot of great creators of that time probably fit somewhere.
Possibly. But also it was about context too. Like it was also like, do you have the time to just sit and write and think and like philosophize?
Like the money to sit and write.
Yeah. But I think, especially if you read some of Dante's like political treatises, it's very much like, this is the right way that things should be done, and this is what needs to be done, and this is how people should do it, and this is who should do it, and this is what morality is. And he's very like Like more so than a lot of other moral philosophers. He's very much like this. He's not like, this is what I think. He's like, this is the right way that it should be done. And anybody who thinks otherwise is bad and terrible and is going to.
I mean, honestly, this is because like that kind of thinking, it's gonna suck to say it this way, but it is a very like a religious form of thinking, like really axiomatic, really, what is it, dogmatic? Is that the phrase? Like black and white thinking was so strong, and obviously Dante did help break that. What do you call it? Break that shell a bit. Yeah. But he's still in the same box. He's still in the same cage, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is that a lot of it was like, the Pope was like, here's what you should believe, and everybody was like, that's the truth. But Dante was like, I'm just going to sit in my room and think about this for 6 hours, and when I come out, I'm going to have a fully formed thought on this one subject. You know, so it wasn't as dogmatic, because it wasn't just like coming down from different layers of hierarchy. It was Dante was just like, I'm just going to like philosophize, and I'm just gonna keep thinking it through until I attain political nirvana, because there's one right way to be politics, and I'm gonna find it.
I gotta say, like, his perspective did end up shaping Italian perspective of politics. Like, he definitely did influence Machiavelli, and Machiavelli wrote some rough things that people really, really agreed with. So gotta work that out.
Machiavelli is he didn't actually mean anything that he said.
I guess like he did. It's just gotten taken way out of context.
Taken way out of context, and also a lot of the things that you wrote were satire, and he was like, this is satire, and anybody who's in the context of my historical time understands that it's satire. But then other people were like, oh, that's what you meant? Okay.
Oh yeah, you want fascism, don't you? All right, cool.
Let's do that. Mussolini, okay, we got that.
Chill. Yeah, we got that. I can relate. Classic, definitely classic.
Mom's like, we got Machiavelli at home, and then it's like Machiavelli at home, and it's Mussolini.
And then Mom's like, ooh.
We got. Don't worry, we got Il Principe at home. Il Principe.
Il Principino. Oh man. Well, I gotta say, man, like it's just kind of hilarious that just the progress of Italian politics is comical. And Italian way of thinking, as influential as it is, when you look at it now, it's like clear influence, but my God. Y'all was wrong.
We love you. Italy, friend of the podcast.
Yeah, sure, the whole country.
Italy's politics, enemy of the podcast.
Wow.
Damn.
Like this video if you like Italy but don't necessarily support the politics.
Like this video if you like Italy but not Berlusconi.
But not Berlusconi.